Welcome to Lake Grove Presbyterian Church's video devotions during Lent, using Jill Duffield's book, Lent in Plain Sight. We will be posting a new video here every Sunday. I'm Leslie Hanscom, the Director of Ministry for Children and Their Families here at Lake Grove. In Thursday's reading this week, in the chapter on dust, Jill Duffield asked the question, have you ever experienced a dark night of the soul? To which my reply is simply yes. It was September 1995, and I was alone at night in San Francisco in my mom's apartment. My mom was in the hospital due to complications from surgery, a splenectomy that was necessary because of her leukemia diagnosis. Mark and my kids, Margaret and John, who were 2 and 6 at the time, were back home here in Portland. This was the time before cell phones, so long-distance calls were expensive and had to be judiciously used, especially on our tight budget. I remember lying in the black darkness that night, feeling totally overwhelmed and totally alone and worried. Decisions would need to be made by me the next day and in all the ensuing days ahead. And I would be trying to dialogue with my sister, who was in Rhode Island, by using a payphone in the hospital corridor so we could determine together what the next steps would be. My grandfather died from the same type of leukemia my mom was just diagnosed with at the same age that my mom was. So I knew only too well what the trajectory of the cancer would be. You know, I don't think I've felt quite that bleakness of spirit again in the ensuing years until last Monday, when the weight of the Russian invasion of Ukraine upon the heels of a global pandemic, coupled with knowing so many people's individual heartaches and struggles, seemed just too much to bear. Jill's words, life becomes an unending Lent with no alleluias uttered, seemed all too true. I could shout out the words on page 9, "Where are you, God?" And I could add a few of my own. Lord, hasn't the world suffered enough? Lord, what about kids and families? What are you asking God right now and shouting out about your own circumstances or about what you read on your news feeds? Lent is that time when you and I can follow Jesus' lead in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he lays his soul completely bare before God. We see Jesus' humanity in his anguished prayer to his Abba, his Father, his Papa. Take this cup of suffering away from me. He repeats that prayer 3 times, and it is filled each time with honest emotion. And it serves as a model for you and me as we pray throughout the 6 weeks of Lent. God's ready and willing ear is attuned to our appeals, to our anguish, to our honest emotions, and he meets us with the gentleness of a parent comforting a child. How do I know that? Because I've experienced it. That night in San Francisco, over 25 years ago, I discovered I wasn't alone in my grief, in my worry. That night, I felt the arms of Jesus enclosing me and holding me close and whispering to me, you are not going through this alone. Jesus' words from Matthew 20:28, and you can be sure that I am always with you to the very end, were all too true that night and seemed to be spoken just to me. Jesus was with me the next 12 months of my mom's life, and he promises to be with you and me in whatever dark days we find ourselves in. His light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. John 1:5. Or in the words of Martin Luther King Jr., darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. May you and I be agents of light and love this week, reminding the world that no matter how deep the darkness may seem, Lent points us to the light and love of the one who cradles us each day and will do so to the very end.